I draw on, I think this was Dr. Russell Barkley who said this. He says ADHD is an explanation. It's not an excuse, right? This is just how your brain works. You still have to perform, right? You still have to figure out how to meet it where you meet your brain, and some days you're going to be able to give it everything it needs, and some days you're not. But it's just the reality of business life is that if you use it as an explanation, then it's about understanding how your brain works and then putting in the right kinds of supports and structures that will work with you, that work for you. That's why I call my weekly OS course your weekly OS, because in italics, because it has to work for you, right? And that's your responsibility, right? That's your responsibility, is to use your talents to their best, like you do with all the folks in your people in your company, is to deploy your resources, human or otherwise, to make the best impact and to achieve everything you can, right? And that includes you. And part of that is, yes, your brain may work in a certain way, but that's just an explanation, right? Okay, so let's work with it. What do you need in order to perform? I have my co-working sessions that I host through my programs, but I've seen people actually take that and said, yeah, we've actually started it in our own business. I've actually started it with other people around us because it's just helping everybody. And so just saying, okay, what are the things that help? And that's the game, right? Because you're not going to get much slack just for having it.
Welcome to another episode of Founders Growth. My name is John Hill. I'm the founder of Adapted Growth, and today we have Steve August on the show. Steve is a founder turned coach who helps ADHD entrepreneurs trade overwhelm for progress. He founded and exited the research tech company Revelation, which was acquired back in 2014, and later served as a CMO for a $100 million private equity-backed company. Today, he runs the ADHD Entrepreneur Accelerator and is the creator of Your Weekly OS. And I'm excited to talk to him because I know a lot of people in the founding role, also in sales roles, who have ADHD, and some of them struggle with it. Some people turn it into their superpower. And I'm excited to kind of dive into this with you because I think a lot of people are struggling with not knowing that they have some of these things, and it's leading them to struggle more than they need to. So can we start there, Steve? Because when we were talking before the show, you told me you got your diagnosis pretty late in life, right?
Yeah.
How old were you when this came up, or when you got your diagnosis? Because I imagine you'd probably been finding ways to deal with it before that.
Yeah, I was 54 when I finally got a diagnosis, and I had been living my whole life with it, and I didn't even realize it, mostly because I was never hyper, right? So everybody thinks of ADHD as that kid bouncing off the wall and can't stay still in class. I was never that kid. And it turns out that ADHD is a very poorly named disorder. And I put disorder in air quotes because I think think of it more as more of a brain type than a disorder. It's like, this is just a brain has strengths, has challenges like other brain types, and we got to work with them. But yeah, so the name ADHD is kind of interesting because it's attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, it's not really a deficit of attention. It's almost a surplus. You can pay attention to everything. It's about, being able to control that attention and put that attention where you want to put it, when you want to put it. And then the hyperactivity side of things, there's 3 different ways it expresses. They call it the hyperactive way. There's the inattentive, which is what I had, was just sort of like the more dreaming, daydreaming, and then there's the combined, where you're doing both. So yeah, I was actually dealing with it my whole life. I'm 57 now, so 3 years ago I got the diagnosis, and somebody that I recently met, and I forget exactly who said this, but they put it perfectly. Like, finding out that getting a diagnosis was like getting the blueprints to the house I lived in my whole life.
What a statement, honestly. The thing that I think I'm most curious about, before you got the diagnosis, what made you even go look? I mean, you got some pretty big stuff in your background, right? You're 50, you obviously know how to get some stuff done and everything. What were you feeling? What were you experiencing? What was happening to even make you open to the idea that this is something you should go get checked out? Because it's very easy to, tell ourselves that that it's not a real problem and we should be better and we're going to be better tomorrow and everything. How what was getting you to think about it differently?
Yeah. So, you know, there is sort of the stigma, and I was in this camp for most of my life too. Is like, hey, it's just an excuse, stigma. We're all a little distracted. We have this. We're in a social media world or an algorithm driven world where the richest companies are hiring the best, most talented people to do nothing but really hack your attention and monetize that. Right. That's
Uh-huh.
the world we live in. That's the business model that's emerged. Right. And so I was very resistant to like exploring it. And then what happened was I got into my 50s. I started a new business. It was a cool little art meets IoT meets finance. We had a little
Hmm.
uh, uh, product called The Market, and it was a brass and wood sculpture of a bull and a bear on a seesaw, and it would tilt in real time to whatever the stock market was doing.
That's
Um,
dope.
yeah, it was
I
really
love
cool.
that.
We did the first run of that, and sold that first run, sold them for like $1,000 a pop. And excuse me, and then we were about to do our second run, and COVID hit, and so everything got jammed up, and I was sort of more bootstrapping it, and it was like keeping it really lean, and so it was really challenging to continue on with that. And at the same time, my kiddo got really seriously ill. And so there was all this stuff that was piling up with everything that was going on. And I had a full coaching practice. And I got to the point a few years later where, where I was still succeeding, but the cost was immense in terms of like making progress. What they call the ADHD tax, right? Is that we pay a tax because it's harder for us to figure out what's the most important thing. Our brains are going to make everything feel equally important and equally urgent. So that gets pretty overwhelming and we have to plow through that. And then just being able to like task initiate and actually start stuff. And it
Mm,
got to the point where I remember I said, I realized it wasn't that I couldn't finish the email. I couldn't finish the first sentence of the email before my brain would take me off someplace off to YouTube. And I was like, okay, I think we're beyond just being a little distracted. So maybe there is a case here to be made to just get an assessment and see what it says. And so I did that, and then the doctor looked at it and was like, oh yeah, you
Was it one of those like, how did you not know?
a little bit, right?
Hmm.
There were things that I didn't realize were ADHD traits, like these insatiable kind of what would you call it? The impulse to interrupt people to finish their sentences because you know where they're going or you think you know where they're going.
Mm,
And I always thought, I'm just kind of awkward socially, but it was also just like them. My brain wants to jump in, and all these different things that I didn't really know about were part of the ADHD experience. And all of a sudden, like things started to make sense, right? Things started, oh, I understand why, I'd hit these behavioral patterns, why there was all these, piles of really brilliant ideas half done,
mm.
whether they were, whatever they were, right? And suddenly, like it really opened my eyes to like, okay, this is interesting in the sense that, okay, I've been living my life like this and I've been succeeding even with it. But imagine now that I have the blueprint of like the brain I have, like now I can actually work with it if I can figure out what are the tools and systems that are actually going to work for me.
When you hit that plane of like the awareness and you're, I'm gonna go check this out. Did you have a moment before that of like, well, I just need some productivity stuff. I just need to go read Getting Things Done, the Checklist Manifesto. Did you go try to like serve just through like lower or not lower productivity, but just regular productivity thinking and tips
Oh,
and hacks and
absolutely.
stuff?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Went through, and the productivity industry is really good at selling you on that, like Notion,
Oh yeah.
GTD, Todoist, Evernote, all these things, the Atomic Habits, and it's all like good stuff. But I found that in retrospect, like these things didn't work, right? Or they would
Mhm.
work for a little while and then they wouldn't work, right? And because here's what I subsequently learned, what was going on was that some of these tools are just tools and not systems. Like Notion is a tool,
Mm.
right? It will help you do anything, but it's not a system in itself, right? It's kind of sold that way. Like this will get you organized. It's like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, no, this is a place where you can like put stuff, but it's not actually a system per se. And then on the flip side, there's systems like GTD and Atomic Habits, and they are systems, but they don't necessarily all recognize or acknowledge that, with an ADHD brain, the things that may be pretty straightforward to do for a more neurotypical brain, like I always laugh now when I read a productivity article and they say, okay, first brain dump everything in your mind, then prioritize it, then make a to-do list. It's like, whoa, back up, right? That prioritization step is cognitively really expensive for an ADHD brain, right? Because our brains are not, because it's essentially more about executive function than it is about attention, right? I love what Dr. Russell Barkley said about it. It's more of a performance disorder than an attention disorder, right? We know what to
That's an
do.
interesting.
We have
So
trouble doing what we know.
you said this thing just a second ago that I'm fascinated by, right? You said that prioritization is expensive, right? Like
Cognitively, yes.
cognitively, right?
Yeah.
Right. So when I hear that, is the mode of like, okay, get better at spending more money, or like is that it, or should you work in a way that you don't have to spend the capital in those high value, like how should people who are thinking about this like take action to try to like test and
Yeah.
and see if they can cause an impact?
Yeah. So the thing is with ADHD brains, there's a few things that are really key to know, right?
Hmm.
One is um, that decision making and prioritization is challenging. Our brains will make everything equally urgent, and we have something called time blindness, and we have a
Hmm.
very interesting relationship with time. Like
Yeah,
it's
we're
not just
bad
that
at it. Yeah,
we're
real bad.
bad at it, right? And we don't. So, and that works on so many different levels. And one of the things is like putting things in a sequence. We're horrible at that, right? In terms of like when should this thing happen, right? So if everything is equally urgent and everything is equally important, it creates what I call this like wall of everything now. And it's just you're staring up at this wall. It's like everything it has to be done right now. So you're hopelessly behind and overwhelmed. So
Yeah,
that puts us into this like paralyzing mode of like, okay, our brain can't unstack this wall and put them in order. And so um, that's part of what I teach in my course is how do we do that, given we know that this is what our brain is going to do, is going to always be adding new stuff in, and it's going to be
hmm,
really, really bad at taking stuff out. Right.
interesting.
Right. And so that's one of the first things that I help people with is like, okay, so in order to be able to prioritize, we have to be really clear on where we want to go and how we want our lives to look.
100%. Yeah,
Right. And the thing is that can easily slip out of our minds, because another
yeah,
little quirk of ADHD is a lower working memory. And working memory is like the things that keep out of sight things in mind. And so if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And so that
yeah,
makes it really easy to lose sight of where we want to go. And if we don't have that in clear sight, then it's hard to make decisions, because every
100%.
decision has to be like held up to that.
Yeah,
And then break down, okay, given that's where we want to go, here are the different things we have to do. Like, let's break this down into steps, right? And so it's okay, what's the waypoint between where we are now and where
mhm,
we want to go? What's the next waypoint? Could be halfway there, could be a quarter way there, whatever. Okay, so that if that's the where we want to go next, what's in our way, right?
yeah,
That's what we work on, right? So we come at it from a totally different thing. Rather than having a list of everything,
hmm,
we figure out, well, what's most in our way, um, and look at it that way, because we're probably pretty good at figuring out what's in our way. And so it's a matter of like approaching it that way.
I'm having an interesting moment here, Steve, as I'm hearing you talk about some of these things, because uh, I come I come to this lane of like sales coaching and training kind of like as a fish out of water because I'm not really personality wise meant to be in sales. And I had a coach who did disc with me and showed me who I was on disc. And it was I think probably as impactful as you getting your diagnosis, from your doctor or whatever, because it showed me why some of these things were difficult for me, but leaning into, my greatness is kind of how I got to here. But one of the things that I often kind of run into is a lot of people who were pushing to thrive and scramble as opposed to being disciplined and having things locked down because salespeople have to have it locked down, right? And if you're
Hmm.
going to be a founder who's still in the sales seat, you need to have the sales side locked down, right? From
Yeah.
activities and different things
Hmm.
like that. And it's a very common struggle for most of my clients to like struggle with that idea, right? But personality wise, they're also kind of that visionary entrepreneur who likes that scattered, who likes that chaos of the day to day to day.
Hmm.
As a sales trainer, right? How can I do a better job of like knowing if I'm just dealing with someone who like hasn't ever been in a disciplined environment and having to be very thoughtful and looking for feedback loops and they're just kind of resistant to it versus someone who might be neurodiverse and this is actually harder for them. It's not avoidance or reluctance, it's something
Hmm.
else. How can I do a better job of finding that? Or how can any sales leader who has a mixed team of people try to find that in their people?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a really good question, right? And it's a really interesting question when you're managing people and you're like, and you have a neurodiverse team. You've got different kinds of brains
Uh-huh.
that you're working with, and they have different strengths. And you're right. Sales is often about like showing up, getting your reps in, like getting your outreaches.
Yep.
What is your activity level? Because that's all the leading indicators that are going
Uh-huh.
to show you if you're likely to like succeed. Like
Yep.
and and that's what fills our pipelines. So some of it is uh to me, if it's a neurodiverse person, often they're already working really, really hard
Oh
to
man,
like
yeah.
make it happen, right?
Okay.
Because the whole like the whole figuring out what's the most important thing and then task initiating on those things. And then ADHD comes with another thing called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which means that like more sensitive to rejection, right? Which is a interesting thing, especially in sales, where
Uh-huh.
rejection is like the more rejection you get, probably the better salesperson you are.
The better you're doing. Yeah, for
Right.
sure.
Because that means you're actually doing the reps and you're out there and
Uh-huh.
you're doing it, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it's about whenever I look at that person, I've coached people inside of organizations with ADHD, and I can tell the difference between somebody who really wants to improve and somebody who might be, say, using it as a little bit of an excuse, right? And
God, like, and that's I was that guy for like the first 10 years, not
Mhm,
like I just always had an excuse about why I didn't need to try harder, right? Because like,
mhm,
I was just kind of stuck for a while about thinking of like, well, I shouldn't have to try that hard. And
mhm,
eventually when I grow up and I get out of sales, then I'll have a job I can care about, right? And I kind of had to
mhm.
fix all of that stuff. Um, what I'm going to nerd out with you for just a second.
Sure.
W- How do you tell the difference between like perfunctory, performative, well, yeah, I'm super busy. I'm just busy, 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 busy. And someone
Mhm.
who is stuck and busy, right? Versus
Yeah.
trying to like enable, like is that kind of the shakeout? Like they're enabling it versus they're stuck in it?
It's, I judge it by do they take advantage of the resources offered, right? So in all my programs, I offer co-working sessions. So
Mm,
sometimes called body doubling. And it's like one of the things that really helps ADHD brains get out of procrastination and do stuff. It's this
hmm.
weird kind of magic. You show up with people on Zoom or in person. You
Yeah.
tell the other person what you're going to do or the other people what you're going to do. You set a timer and you go do it. It doesn't seem like it should work. It should make a difference. It does.
It
Somehow
absolutely does. Yeah. It makes a huge
it
difference.
totally does. So how I find it, so I had two people I was coaching. They're both, senior team members. And one took to that and said, that is just awesome. That is exactly what I need. And took to the coaching and, you know, showed up for the sessions and booked sessions with me. And the other person didn't. And eventually that person spun out of the company and the other person succeeded. So to me, it's about, do they take the help that's offered if it's the right help, right? And um, do they try that? Because generally the people who I see who succeed and keep growing,
Hmm.
are like, yeah, I got the ADHD and it's not going to stop me. But boy, I really need this support in order to do it, and I'm going to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And they just come at it, and I think that's true, whether it's a ADHD brain or even a regular team member,
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
right, who is neurotypical and is just like, it's their first sales gig, and they haven't developed the
Yeah.
discipline, the habits, and things like that. Um, do they take the help?
Well, and this is fascinating because like sales has often been taught and trained by just by like osmosis, right? You have these
Hmm.
big groups of people that are all doing the same thing, and you have syncs and you have meetings, and you're all on top of each other because this is back before COVID and everything, and you would just kind of there'd be some osmosis effect, right? You're just around other people, you hearing their talking points, and I started in retail, and so I would hear talking points, and then I would go try it and stuff, so that washover effect is very interesting, and um in the early days of running this business, I would actually do those co-working sessions over Zoom, right?
Hmm.
Just because uh, a friend had an idea, like, does this make us more productive? And
Hmm.
a good friend of mine, he actually talked about, he kind of got viral about this. He actually hired someone to sit at a coffee table with him in a coffee shop. And anytime he tabbed away from the emails or the blogs he's supposed to be writing, they were just supposed to reach across and slap him, right? And there's videos of him getting knocked in the middle of a
Right.
coffee shop,
Hmm.
And so it's weird because part of me, right, the sales coach in me wants to be like, well, everybody needs accountability. Everybody needs
Hmm.
people to kind of model and to kind of, look towards and things like that, especially if you're not going to go into training and develop your people the right way and stuff like that. So how how much and also salespeople are just notoriously resistant to like asking for help and coming to calls and stuff like that, right? So
Sure. Well, because every call is like, I should be dialing. The meetings are
yes,
are just taking me
exactly.
away from my dialing and my mailing and my follow-ups. And
Hmm. Yep. That is
but it,
fascinating.
yeah, I mean, it's a trade-off too, right? As a sales leader, sales manager, you're also thinking that is like, I want these guys doing the activities that move the needle, but we also have to be smart about it, and
100%.
be coordinated about it. So yeah, I've
Yeah.
been in those situations, and it's just fascinating to see it, but it really is about, you know, one of the things that I learned about ADHD is there's really only two things that get an ADHD brain really moving a lot of times, and that is intense interest, like
Mm.
super interested in a subject, hyper focus, going to research it for days, right? And intense consequences, urgent consequences, right?
So like
I'm up against
deadlines.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
deadlines,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
Yeah, deadlines. This activity goes up at the end of the quarter, sales wise, doesn't it? Generally.
If they're not paying attention to what I'm teaching them, yes, that's often how it goes, right? Because
Mhm.
uh, this is fascinating because like hearing you talk about these friction points, right? I deal with some of these, right?
Mhm.
Uh, Largely, I've gotten better at like not letting the need for such clear expectations that I don't have any pressure on me to like stop me and stuff like that. But I also know you're talking about most salesperson who wants to be in sales, right? They kind of thrive in that I'm just out here doing whatever I want to be doing, and it's going to be okay because I'm going to hit the goal. And every high performing salesperson is doing some version of like apple a day kind of thing,
Yep.
right? Chop wood, carry water. I need to do a little bit every day, and so then I
Hmm.
don't ever have to make a day of it, and all of those kind of trade offs and stuff. And so it's fascinating because as a coach and especially for founders, I'll push these ideas of like, hey, just do a little bit every day, like chop wood, carry water, make it a daily thing and stuff like that. And I might be putting it into a package that makes it impossible for them to like use anything with. Huh.
Yeah. It may or may not. I mean, I call it the dopamine desert in between the like intense interest and the urgent deadline.
Okay.
Is like, and we all as humans experience that when we're all, you know, given towards procrastination a little bit. It's just ADHD
Hmm.
brains are just kind of like have it like 10x more. And it's about creating interest where you can where you can do it. So a lot of things I talk about are like rituals versus routines. Like how do
Mm.
you imbue things to make them more interesting and more meaningful? Whether it's like, okay, I'm going to do my first 10 reach outs. I have my best, my favorite mug, my favorite coffee, my favorite snack. And
Yeah.
that's my ritual, right?
Yeah.
It's like some way to do it so that it becomes something that is, you, you'll almost look forward to, like, because it's part of what, creates the progress over time. And, yeah, and it's fascinating. Especially in sales, because it is like the game is the consistency, and
Hmm.
consistency tends to over time beats intensity in like all
100%.
aspects of life.
You said a second ago that I think, and correct me if I'm
Mm,
wrong, you were already doing some coaching whenever you got your diagnosis, right?
yeah.
What were you were you coaching around performance and focus? Were you coaching in, like in this lane, or was it something else and then you learned this about yourself and you said like this is the impact I want to make? How did you get to where you are?
Yeah. So when I left the company that bought my company that was, flipped to another private equity company, and
Hmm.
I was fairly burnt out at that point. And
Okay.
this is 2017. And
Okay.
so I spun out and I was like, okay, what now? And people started coming to me and say, hey, Steve, you seem to have learned a few things
Hmm.
about this. Can I get your opinion on this, or I can get your advice on this? And there were a lot of founders. And so I just started coaching startup founders with a real specialty with from seed to Series A.
Mm.
Like, because to
Okay.
me, that was the place that was really challenging for an early stage founder, because that was the place where you really had to go from founder to CEO. Right. And
Wow.
so founder is a title that you get to keep forever just by starting something. Like nobody can ever
Hmm.
take that away from you. The CEO has to be re-earned at each level. And once you get into this first bits of like getting from 10 team members, 20 team members, 30, 40, 50, the game changes, and you have to go from being founder to like, what is a CEO? What is the leadership journey in that? And that was something that was really eye opening for me when I did my startup. Is like, oh, it's like we all have this when we go into it the first time, we have this kind of image of how it's going to be,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
From the press or from Silicon Valley or whatever,
Hmm.
and it's usually a very different journey inside, right?
Yeah.
It's a very much a journey that happens on two levels, right? There's the entrepreneurial level, right, where you're like, okay, we're growing. I got to learn how to manage a team. I got to learn how to communicate. I got to learn how to like scale sales beyond founder led sales,
Hmm.
because that's a big demarcation point, right, from the
That's a
salesperson.
huge, huge shift. Yeah.
Yeah, like when you're going, I got to bring in salespeople, and all of a sudden, but they're never going to sell it as good as like the evangelist founder, right? But
Yeah.
you are going to capture growth if you don't figure out a way to make that happen. Um, and so it's happening at that level. Just what are you learning about being in business? But in order for that to happen, you're also on a different journey, what I call like the bigger game. We're playing the game at two levels. There's the entrepreneurial level, which is the business level, all the stuff that happens there. And then there's the bigger game, which is the inner transformation that we have to make in order to
Oh,
become the person
yeah.
that is able to do that thing, to step into like, yeah, we're now in charge of people. And now people are going to they're going to speak to us differently when we're a 20 or 40 or 50 person company than they did when we were just three guys hanging out in a room just trying to make something happen. Like
Yeah.
it's like you're the same person, but you have to change
Yep.
and step into these roles. And the beautiful thing about the bigger game is that you can't lose it. It's the game you can only win. And anything that happens in the entrepreneurial level is pushing you forward on that bigger game, right? All the good, the bad, the ugly, they're all going to happen in
Yeah.
this game. But that it gives you opportunity to grow. And I say, like, in terms of personal development platforms, that entrepreneurship, being a founder, is like second only to parenthood uh, when it comes
Yeah.
to like
I would say
growing as a
so.
person. And entrepreneurship is going to push all your buttons, all the trigger, all the traumas, everything
Yeah.
that's in your wiring. Like, it's going to put you in this position where those things get triggered, and that's actually a great service. Um, so that
That's
we
awesome.
can actually grow into those things or deal with those things. So that's the kind of coaching I was doing before I got my ADHD
Okay.
diagnosis. And, I was, coaching people and folks were doing well. And, one company raised a $70 million Series A, had a few great exits, just some really fascinating names, that I was coaching and some cool brands, and even was starting to lead founder retreats. So a VC had hired me to facilitate their founder retreat in Portugal. And, so that was really great. And then, 22 over to 23 and 4 is when the financial world started to shift. Like money wasn't free anymore, right? Remember, money was free for a very long time.
Very long time, yeah. If you can have users and a decent idea, yeah, well, absolutely.
Yeah. And so a lot of the seed stage folks that I was coaching ran out of runway. And some of them, took off and did great, but others, just because valuations were so artificially high, they ran into this place where, valuations came down, but their valuation was set before that. So in order for them to raise, there was either a down round or a no round. And so it was really interesting to see that. And so at the same time is when I started to hit my kind of like, story where I described where I got my ADHD diagnosis. And it was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, I see where these intersect, right? We have to deal with the whole person. And if, I know what the cost was, like I succeeded from the outside, but I know what the cost was internally to me to go through that and not know how to work with my brain and to be paying the ADHD tax the whole time and all that. So I thought, that's the place, right? I have that lived experience, and I've developed systems to start to help me push forward on that. And, and I can create that space as super welcoming to all brains. And so that's what I started doing.
I'm curious to know what the timeline was between you getting your diagnosis and like shifting into this direction. Like was it one of those things to where like you leave and you're like, this is it. I want to go make an impact here. This is too big of a thing. Did you have any imposter syndrome about, can I help here? Do I know enough? I just found this out about myself. Like, what was the timeline to shifting into helping people with this and taking a more holistic approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the funny thing about the US, and I found out other medical systems, is they're very much diagnose and prescribe. It's like, you have ADHD, here's your Adderall, off you go, right? Yep. Fixed, right? Yeah. Not so simple, right? And so I, got my diagnosis, I think it was 2023 at this point. Yeah. 2023? Yeah, it was in 2023 because I remember being on that retreat in Portugal and having Adderall. So it was 2023. And Adderall was working at that point, and then it stopped working. And I was like, okay, so what now? And then I got a coach. I got an ADHD coach that somebody recommended because I did a personal retreat for myself. And I said, what is the big root challenge that if I solve or I make progress on is going to help everything else move faster or be better? And I said, well, if I could actually work better with my ADHD brain and focus and do stuff and figure out how to prioritize better and task initiate, everything's got to get better, right? Everything's got to move forward in a different way. And so I got my first coach, my ADHD coach, and that's when things started to unlock, is because they don't like things like time blindness and rejection sensitivity and all these working memory deficits and all these things and all these other traits that come with ADHD. The doctor didn't tell me about any of that.
Yeah.
Right. It was like, here's your assessment, here's your Adderall,
here's your cure.
Off you go. Yeah. Right. And let's see how this works. See if you can focus. And it was just like, once I started to understand it, I was like, oh, this makes so much sense now. And the thing with meds is they can be really helpful. They can be super unhelpful, or they can be variably helpful and unhelpful. Right. Yeah. They can work for a time and then not work. Which I had the experience of multiple times.
Interesting.
And so what we need is what the cliche is, the pills don't teach the skills, right? And so you need...
What a great line. The pills don't teach oh my gosh. Is that like a known
It's a
line
known
inside of
line
the
in the
ADHD
ADHD
community.
world. Yeah.
I
The pills
love
don't
that.
teach the skills.
Yeah, you
And
should make that a shirt.
yeah. And so, yeah, our shirt for the accelerator is not now squirrels. We got work to do.
Also epic. Very nice.
Yeah. And so, yeah, the thing about it, so I started to think about, well, my first cut at it was this called focus formula was the first thing I created. And it was like, okay, here's the things that are working for me. I started writing about writing my experiences, and people just started like raising their hands and say, how are you inside my brain? Right.
Hmm.
Because you are like, you are talking to my experience directly.
Yeah.
And I started saying, okay, well, I'll just keep sharing what's working for me. And then I invited people into a workshop. I called it focus formula at the time. And that's when I started to say, okay, in order to prioritize, really tough thing, right? We have to know where we're going and and how we want our life to look. Those are the two pieces. And then um, we only have so much. We have to like really think about executive function, like diabetics think about insulin. Like we're managing our executive
Whoa.
function because we have a limited pool, right? So on a given day, we have a pool of executive function where we can
Hmm.
be at peak and say, we have a really good chance of like starting and like making progress on the thing we really want to do. And then outside of that window, like there's chances that decline rapidly.
Yeah.
Right. And so I started talking about this, and I originally learned this concept from a coach named Aaron Croft about a 2-hour workday. It's like, let's just go with the mindset that we have 2 hours of peak executive function per day. So what if we put the most important things there, right? The things that actually will move us forward, the things from the dopamine desert, the things that are going to like make impact if we keep doing them. And I say, well, how do we do that? Well, I'm sure we did. Well, let's set up a co-working. So I just started setting up a co-working and invited some friends. Said, I'm going to co-work 2 hours a day.
That
One joined me,
is.
and people started to do it. So, and then I started to make progress. So that was the first cut,
Mhm.
right? Because there's three things that ADHD brains have a challenge doing: is deciding stuff, doing stuff, and sustaining that over time.
Interesting. Oh my
Right.
gosh. Like I'm having this very flooring experience because, my sales coach was I was getting a better distillation than a lot of other people who were going through the same kind of franchise because it's a franchise model.
Mm-hmm.
And my coach was talking about how you do anything, how you do everything, and really deep
Mm-hmm.
awareness and stuff like this. And I was working with a business partner, and he talked about we only get so many gumballs, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this concept that like once you're out of gumballs, you can't make the hard decision anymore and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And so everything you're talking about, Steve, I have seen and like worked on in sales training, right?
Yeah.
Like really clear goals, really clear
Yeah.
activities to define those goals, not hoping that they're going to be there, right? Making
Mm-hmm.
sure that you're not talking to yourself, you're tracking your effort, you're looking back in the rearview mirror and everything.
Right.
And I'm kind of having this weird realization. I wonder how much of sales training is built just to help undiagnosed ADHDers. That's
Yeah.
like that's what I'm like thinking about as we're having this conversation because everything we've talked about so far are deep wells of focus and in any kind of sales training that's worth worth the money.
Yeah.
Wild.
It's what I think is going on is because ADHD brains have to work harder at it, like we have to like think even more explicitly about it. And
Mhm.
these are the things that everybody should do, right? But
Yeah.
because it's almost like, somebody who has one sense restricted, their other sense gets,
Yeah.
you know,
Stronger. Hmm.
stronger. So, right. So in some ways, because we have to create these devices around us to help make this happen, it just kind of emphasizes it. So it's not a coincidence. It's just the phenomenon that these are the things that lead to sustainable, consistent success. Sustainable and consistent are tough things for ADHD brains, and
That's interesting.
so like putting more focus on how do you actually create that actually is helpful for all brains. And
Hmm.
and so the other thing that kind of kicked in after I did this is like the container for this to really happen in, right? Because one of the things what ADHD brains have a lot of challenge with is time, right? So
Mhm.
if you have a quarterly goal or a yearly goal,
Mhm. Mhm.
way too far out. Like there's no,
Yep.
like, think about what makes ADHD brains like get into action, either intense interest or urgent deadline. A year from now, um, is not an urgent deadline. A quarter out isn't really an urgent deadline. And so what I started to realize is that the week was the best container,
Hmm.
because a day is too variable. As we all know, our
Yeah.
days can blow up. A
Yep.
client has a call, client situation, a life situation, just, I don't know, your computer breaks, right? Like, days are variable, and quarters are too long, and months are made up of weeks. So a week is like, if you can figure out going into the week what your good week is, and that is, what's the most important thing?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to make progress on that? Any kind of progress. Like, we don't really qualify it. Like, it can be slow progress. It can be messy progress. It can be awesome
Yeah.
progress. But if it's, as long as it's like you showing up to it, it's progress. And then
Mm-hmm.
did you meet your ADHD brain where it's at? Because managing to your brain, like changing the question, like, how do I best work with my brain versus how can I get everything done, is key. Because, ADHD, from the ADHD perspective, there's only so much we have to give on a given day
Yeah.
or a given period. And what I see a lot, the pattern is like, it's a real stress cycle with
Mm.
deadlines, right? So we start off good, we're interested in, we're excited, and then the dopamine desert hits. And the stuff that ideally would make it a lower trauma deadline doesn't happen. And then we get to this urgent, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh wait, this is going to take way longer than we thought. And we're scrambling, and we're using tons of executive function. And then we hit it, or we hit the thing, we make the milestone, or, we do the best we can. And then we have this drop, right? Because we don't get that satisfaction, right? Because we're not
Mm.
doing it out of, like, we're doing it to escape something, not to achieve something,
Yes.
right? So
Okay.
it's not like, yay team, go, go, go. It's like,
Yeah.
holy crap, like,
Make the best of it mode kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah, kind of like, oh, got away with it
Huh.
again. Right. And then it's a
Interesting.
week of like recovery if it's a really hard deadline. And that's
Huh.
the thing that over time leads to burnout and leads to like life getting crowded out. Because if you're always in this sense of like, I'm just waiting for these consequences to hit so I can actually get into motion so that I can re-escape the consequences.
Oh, you become numb to
Yeah.
signal.
Right. You're just always, your cortisol is your main
Ugh.
main driver. And I saw, I always wondered this. I had my CTO come to me. We had just done, I remember this like yesterday. The team had done this amazing software release, and they were celebrating, and it was a fun group of developers, and I really liked them, and they were playing video game. Like, we always have this like video game
Mm-hmm.
marathon that Friday night of the release. We did it, it's really good, some of our best work, and everybody would be celebrating and having a great time. I would be in the pit of despair, right? Because we hit the deadline, but my brain would just then flood in with everything that isn't done and it isn't
Mm-hmm.
working and could have been better. And I was like, and my CTO came and said, Steve, why is it that, every, like, we just did something really amazing, like, and you don't seem happy, like, what's going on? And I didn't know at that point why that kept happening.
Yeah.
Right. And now I understand. Oh, I hit the deadline. We hit the deadline, and I had the drop. I had the dopamine drop right after.
Mm-hmm.
So at the point where it should have been this feeling of elation and achievement, it was just, I escaped the latest deadline. And what was in front of me? The next one eventually. Right. And so it wasn't, and that's the challenge sometimes with ADHD brain, is it can suck a lot of joy if you're not careful out of
This is
things.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Like, this is kind of blowing my mind a little bit. Um, okay, so here, okay, diving into this a little bit. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think about the best way to kind of phrase this question without leading the witness too much. There's a lot of founders who I think might be seeing some of themselves in some of the things we're talking about here.
Mhm.
And I've seen people who will, take ADHD diagnosis as like a crutch, right?
Mhm.
And kind of they almost use it like a weapon kind of thing,
Mhm.
right? And it's like a
Mhm.
way for them to just have permission to not
Mhm.
perform at the level that they want. And so as someone who, has to push people occasionally, right, to go challenge themselves and do the uncomfortable things and everything, how can a founder or someone who's maybe seeing some of themselves in things we're talking about
Mhm.
not lean into it being a convenient excuse? How
Mhm.
can they, is that, I can't imagine walking that path and trying to own all the steps. You're already out here running your own business, right? You've tried, you're out here, you're doing these things, right? And now, it, because on some level, I think it's probably hugely clarifying, right? To go through
Mhm.
this experience and then come back, oh my gosh, right? Just like it was super helpful for me to just learn how my personality was not really built for sales. And that's why some of the friction I was having was having.
Yeah.
How do people accept this
Mhm.
once they become aware of it and own it, right? And use it as opposed to it using you and, lowering your probabilities of success as a founder.
Yeah. I mean, I draw on. I think this is Dr. Russell Barkley who said this. He says it's ADHD is an explanation. It's not an excuse,
Mm, okay.
right? This is just how your brain works. You still have to perform, right? You still have
Still
to
have to
figure
perform.
out how to meet it where you meet your brain, and some days you're going to be able to give it everything it needs, and some days you're not. Um, but it's you know it's just the reality of business life is that if you use it as an explanation, then it's about understanding how your brain works and then putting in the right kinds of supports and
Hmm.
structures that will work with you, that work for you. That's why I call my weekly OS course your weekly OS, because in italics, because it has to work for you, right?
Hmm.
And that's your responsibility, right? That's your responsibility is to use your talents to their best, like you do with all the folks in your people in your company, is to deploy your resources, human or otherwise, to make the best impact and to achieve everything you can, right? And that includes you. And part of that is, yes, your brain may work in a certain way, but that's just an explanation, right? Okay, so let's work with it. What do you need in order to perform? And if you
Yeah.
need, and that's what I've seen. I've seen people do. They're actually, uh, I have my co-working sessions that I host through my programs, but I've seen people actually take that and said, yeah, we've actually started it in our own business. I've actually started it with other people
Yeah.
around us because it's just helping everybody. And so just saying, okay, what are the things that help?
Hmm.
And that's the game, right? Because you're
So
not going to get much slack just for having it.
here's okay, heard, and
Yeah.
hugely appreciated. Okay. One of the things that I think is easier for me to do, right? And I don't know kind of where this comes from. It might be from military or martial arts or something like this, is my default mode is to lock in, push through. You know,
Hmm.
one of the things that I've gotten better about is understanding kind of where it doesn't make sense to push because I don't have enough knowledge, or maybe I'm focused on the wrong thing and stuff like that. If an entrepreneur or founder has ADHD and they're hitting that plane of resistance, right? It's just hard to focus. When should they lean into, take a break, go find something else to do, come back tomorrow when you can bring your whole self to it versus
Hmm.
di- lock it in?
Yeah. Like, and it's an ongoing question. Like, it's a great question that you pose, and there's not one answer to it because
Okay.
sometimes the answer is to push through. Like, you got no choice.
Yeah.
Um, but here's the way to frame it, though. Um, that the question I always like to start with is, what is my brain asking me for right now? Right.
What
So
is
it
my
might
brain
be
asking
asking
me
for
for?
rest. It might be
Hmm.
asking for, just give me a dopamine hit. Just give me a dopamine hit, when we no, you may not want to give me that. But it's sort of like, when I think about it as, what is my brain doing right now versus like, what do I need to do? There's just enough of a separation to say,
Hmm.
okay, I can kind of get above myself and kind of do some self-regulation. Um, the other thing is, like, when there is a deadline or something looming, like when I see there's, okay, I'm going to be I have a launch or something. Like, I know post launch, I got to schedule in a lighter day,
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I know that, I used to and this is what happens. It used to happen all the time. It's like, I'm going. And I'd show up one day, I'd be like, I got nothing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I might as well not be sitting here because
Yeah.
I'm getting nothing done and I'm just feeling like more like frustrated with myself. And so understanding, again, this is like understanding what is it understanding your brain so that that if you're going to like really draw down on the executive function and draw down on the dopamine, there's going to be a dip.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a time where your brain is going to be like, I got nothing for you. And sometimes I see this happen a few ways. Like one of my favorite examples is before I understood this was part of the ADHD thing, I would do a long day at work and come out and my wife would say, hey, we've got these two choices for dinner. Which one do you want? And I would almost explode, like,
Yeah.
because I was just like, I don't care,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't say this stuff out loud, but I really did not want to be part of this decision. But inside I was thinking, I don't care. Just pick
Mm-hmm.
something. And as I understood later, it's like my brain had gotten to the point where it's like, it's got no more capacity for decisions. And it was, and as I understood that, it was like, of course it's throwing a fit. It's throwing a little tantrum because I've just asked it to do one more thing. And it just can't right now. And it's just going to flip out. And so once I understood that, I was able to kind of reframe that discussion and say, okay, my brain's a little tired right now. Pick one and go with it. Or just say, hey, your choice or whatever is like, or just say my brain's just really exhausted right now. It can't really decide. If I had to pick, I would just flip a coin.
Yeah.
But they all both look really good. And I appreciate that it's happening, right? Hey, because this person's doing a really nice thing for me. They're making dinner,
Yeah.
right? And I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be the person who's just like, ugh,
Mm-hmm.
just because my brain's going. And but that's the kind of awareness. It's sort of like over time developing that awareness is like, if my brain's doing this, if it's sending me this message, it means something. It means like it's tired. It wants rest. Um, it needs something. And what is
Mm-hmm.
it do I need to give it right now?
Epic. Great answer. Oh my gosh. Because there's a lot of other things, right? So I'm a big fan of doing some sort of awareness, right? I mean, I like disc a lot, but honestly, I see value in most of these things. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that sometimes, the ADHD, I guess, like diagnostic kind of process with the testing and stuff like that can be laborious or can be expensive. And if you're a brand new founder, you might not have insurance and stuff like that. If someone is listening to this and they've not started yet,
Mm-hmm.
okay, but they want to kind of make sure that they're leading with intention and awareness and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
how like, is your advice to everybody go get tested and see if you're neurodiverse, if you have any of these things? Is it don't worry about it until it shows up in a negative way? Like, what's your advice for founders who
Yeah. I mean, my take is if you suspect, then, then there's lots of places online you can do kind of initial assessments.
Mhm.
Um, just to give you a sense, even I have a kind of a lightweight initial assessment that draws on um, one of the self-assessments that the doctors use. And then if you see the pattern in your life, like try the things that help it, that are suggested to help it, and see if it helps.
Hmm.
Right? Like
Okay.
I have people in my groups who are not officially diagnosed, but they're just like, everything that when they do the things that we do and the kind of what they put in their weekly OS or they're doing the co-working or the 2-hour work, it just works for them. And they're just like, cool. Like,
So if it works, it works. But
absolutely.
I love that. I think that because the concern is always, okay, do I have permission to start? Right? A lot of people get stuck because they're waiting for permission and stuff like this, and too big a detour can lead to loss of motivation and overthinking and things like that. So I think that's really great advice.
Yeah. If you're procrastinating on it, it might also be a sign that,
Yeah. One of the things that I tell everybody is the thing you don't want to track is the thing you're most scared of, right?
yeah.
And especially in sales, because if you're not doing any outreach, it's very easy to kind of hide and I'm so busy. Are you really?
Yeah.
When
Well,
you're thinking about your path as a founder, Steve, right?
yeah.
With social media and there's so much content and everyone pushing a message and there's so many spiky opinions and everything. I love and also hate folksy language, right? The dogma, the mantras and
Mm.
everything. I'm curious, what piece of dogma advice do you appreciate now that you couldn't really appreciate until you like ran into it?
Hmm. Just as a total founder experience or
Yeah,
specific
total
to,
founder experience. Yeah.
woof. Oh God, there's a few. I mean, the thing that I come back to at the beginning, like it's different for different stages. Like at
Mm-hmm.
the beginning, when you're starting out, is you're going to fall in love with your thing,
Mm.
but really it comes down to, is there an urgent bleeding neck pain that you're solving for somebody? Because if without that, like without that urgency, there's no sale. Without sale, there's a really cool idea, but not a business.
One of like, my coach was a big believer in no pain, no sale, right? If the pain of
Mhm.
staying the same is less than the pain of change, everyone is going to stay the same.
Yep.
And I I found it to be super helpful, but it's also one of the ideas that most people hate, right?
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to like how it's taught, right? About going and finding their pain and their and everything else like that, and people take it off the lane that they should be.
Hmm.
But I love that because that's been my case, and I've had lots of arguments, especially with marketers, right, who
Hmm.
don't come from sales and don't take the calls that like, well, it's okay. You can just keep, promising, promising, promising. And I'm like, improvement can wait,
Right.
right? If it sucks bad enough, you'll fix it today. You won't wait for the contract term. You won't do any of these
Hmm.
things, right? And it's a weird thing because a lot of people are like, well, John, I didn't think you were one of those sales coaches. And I'm like, I'm not telling you to go plant it. I'm telling you to go uncover it, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not coming up in that conversation, they're not a prospect you should be continuing to spend time with,
Yep.
you know? And it's a very polarizing opinion. But I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
For someone who's starting today, Steve, what is
Mm.
your biggest word of warning, right? You've been through a very
Hmm.
cool path and have started multiple things at multiple levels and done the big stuff and
Hmm.
the small stuff, right? For someone who's starting today, whether they're going to be a solopreneur or whether they're trying to be the next unicorn, what is
Hmm.
the one piece of advice or word of warning you would want to pass on?
I mean, I would say it all comes down to, are you really helping people, um, like make a significant improvement in whatever it is you're
Hmm.
helping them with? Because one of the things that I've seen, and I talk to a lot of folks, is like, I've got this amazing idea. It's really cool. I've thought about it a lot. It works
Mm-hmm.
for me. And I want to, sell it to this group of people, and they're just using Excel, and they're just like back in the 90s or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I, just warn people that Excel is one of the hardest things to displace, because it's free. It mostly works, even if it's kludgy, and people don't like to change. So you better be coming in with something that materially moves the needle. If you get things and that are important to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because um, I had a great system, and I had to learn, like, our software was really cool. And I could tell who was really needing it and who wasn't, because people would say, oh, that's interesting or cool.
Mm.
And I thought, okay, I'm in, when I was first starting out, if they think it's interesting and cool. And and
Yeah.
it turns out interesting and cool is the kiss of death, right? If you're hearing that,
100%. Yep.
you're just like, they're not that interested. Like, it's just a nice idea.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when you're onto something, when people start asking, okay, when can we get this? How much
Yeah.
does it cost? Like, if you get some combination of those two questions, like, what's our next step?
Yeah.
Um, now you know. If you're not hearing those things early on, you got to find a place or a product market combination where you start hearing those things, because an interesting and cool business is really hard to grow.
I I love that, right? I'm lucky in the fact that I found a lane of passion that I'm really excited about, right?
Mm.
But I also don't think that everybody should be running a business based around their passion because it can get them too
Mm-hmm.
excited and too invested and drinking way too much of their own Kool-Aid. But you also have to be bought in, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if it's not meaningful, you're not going to do the hard stuff. And business is a lot of hard things, right? And sales is
Mm-hmm.
largely uncomfortable conversations, right? Especially if you're not practiced and come from a sales background. So I love that
Yeah.
you're talking about that because it's so easy to lie to ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
And, I hope that everybody who hears this, like, goes out and actually talks to those people early. Like, go talk to them
Yes.
before you build the SaaS, before you build the thing, right? Like, if
Yeah.
you've already got it built and you're just like, why aren't people buying? You're probably holding it with like, well, you're the problem kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, it couldn't be us, stuff like that. And it's like, you've already missed the mark,
Yeah. My phrase that I tell there's a lot of folks in the accelerator, ADHD Entrepreneur Accelerator, who are making the move, or like, launching their first products
Mhm.
and things. And I tell them conversations are your currency in the early days. Is like, conversations are everything. If you're
Yeah.
not having like, your main thing right now is at the beginning is not to, get the best website, not to get the best like ad
Hmm.
campaign, not to get the best social. It's to get into as many conversations as you possibly can with the people who may be the people for what you're
Absolutely.
creating.
Yeah. Like, I get a lot of DMs from people on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and, because I put myself out there, and people be like, how do I even start? And 15 by 50, right? You got to
Yep.
go have 15 conversations with people who you think you're excited to serve. And if you're not willing to make at least 50 asks to have those 15 conversations, you're probably not going to get through a bigger thing. So go test yourself in the form of a hypothesis. Can you even string this action together to get these kinds of things, and largely, as I'm sure you would probably realize, most people just puff a smoke,
Mhm.
right? And then they come back and they're like, okay, well, like, how do I get started? I'm like, I've already given you the medicine. Did you follow this? Well, John, it was hard. Ah, well,
Yeah.
and it's like, there is no judgment if you're not
Mm.
meant to be out on your own, right? Because while I think
Mm.
everybody can, I don't think everybody is supposed to, because it's a lot of weight
No.
and a lot of lanes, and some people don't want to put that much of themselves into their work, and that's okay. I don't have a
Yeah.
problem with that.
Or
But
they just
don't
want
tell
to work.
yourself you want more than what you're actually going to show up and try to get.
It's a great way to put it. Yeah. I mean, or,
So,
I don't judge anybody. Like, entrepreneurship is not an easy game, and uh, there is no entrepreneur who I know or have heard of who hasn't at one point said, "Should just freaking quit this and get a job." This is,
oh,
this is
yeah, I've had those weeks.
right. Yeah, we've all had them, and then you wake up and you go like, "Okay, no, we're still at it," right?
Yeah,
Because what we're looking for is that interest of that intersection of what we're passionate about, what we're driven to create, and what the market needs, what our market needs, what people need. And
yeah,
once we find that intersection, then that's where the magic happens.
I love that. Man, Steve, I really appreciate your time and being willing to come on the show and kind of share your path and kind of talk about how you're helping with people and helping them get past some of these same friction points. If someone wants to come hang out with you, catch up with you, learn more about what you're doing, where would you send them? Where should they seek you out?
Yeah, I mean, the LinkedIn is my main platform
Okay,
that I'm on. My website, steveaugustcoaching.com. And then my podcast, ADHD Entrepreneur Accelerator, available at all the podcast places and YouTube. So if you want to learn more about what I do and how I do it, those are your best places to go.
perfect. Steve, really appreciate the time and you coming on. I really do think that this is going to help some people, and I hope it turns the lights on for some people and they take some action on this, and they, either go get assessed and see who they are, or they start just putting some of these ideas into practice. And if it helps them, I hope it leads them to improve performance, because that's really what this is about. I mean, being a founder, in my opinion, is like having 17 different performance lanes, and you got to be, performing in all of them, or else, it's probably going to be tough to get anything going. So thank you so much for coming and doing this, man. I really do appreciate it. I think it's going to help a lot of people. I'm very excited.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me. It's been great talking with you, a great conversation. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome.